Hello, friends of Terraverse TV. My name is John Altarelli, and today I'm going to talk about Father's Day and share some of my memories of my father. In addition, I will tell you a little bit about two wonderful not-for-profit organizations and the work they do, including a teaser on an upcoming event. Finally, I can't talk about my father without speaking about my family, particularly my brothers. I will do another segment on my mother and sisters as well. Without them, I could never have achieved anything in life. Today, because it's Father's Day, I'm focusing on men. This is not to minimize the issues facing women, minorities, and LGBTQIA+ community. I will address those groups in future posts. My goal is to help others reflect on the roles that their father and other family members and role models played in their development. The suicide rate among men is 4 times higher than women. The suicide rate among male veterans is 1.5 times higher than non-veteran males. Those numbers are startling. Many men are reluctant to share their feelings and ask for help. I hope by sharing my stories, it will help others share their stories, including the highs and the lows and the fears and the concerns and the successes and the failures. We all have our demons and challenges, and it will help to share with each other so we can deal with them more effectively. Today the weather is great, so I rode my Harley up the Hudson River to Newburgh, New York, near West Point. I recorded some video, but the quality is poor because my bike will rattle the fillings out of your teeth. Anyone who has a Harley knows what I'm talking about. This leads me into the two charities I mentioned earlier. Last month I rode my motorcycle in the annual Distinguished Gentleman's Ride in New York City with over 1,000 other bikes. The 2024 DGR included over 113,000 riders in 105 countries around the world. The mission of the DGR is to raise awareness for men's health, particularly prostate cancer and mental health, things that men don't like to discuss. The other organization I want to talk about is Guardian Revival. I am wearing their shirt today. Guardian Revival was founded by my good friend Alex Othmer, a former Navy SEAL. Their mission is to improve the mental health and well-being of military personnel and first responders and their families. They run several programs including outdoor adventures, companion dogs, music as therapy, and peer support and counseling. I will be posting information soon about an upcoming event with Guardian Revival. This event is not to be missed. They have limited spots, but I was able to procure a few spots for the subscribers of Terraverse TV. Keep a lookout for this info. I will put links below if anyone wants to learn more about these wonderful organizations. Also, if you are having mental health issues and don't know who to talk to, send me a comment and we will try to find the right organization to help. I work with many groups, and if I can't find the right resource, I'm sure someone in our community will be able to help. You are not alone. On this Father's Day, we honor the incredible fathers and father figures who have shaped our lives with their love, wisdom, and unwavering support. Today, we celebrate the countless moments of joy, guidance, and sacrifice that fathers provide. Whether it's a comforting word, a helping hand, or simply being present, fathers play an irreplaceable role in our lives. To all the fathers, thank you for your dedication and love. Happy Father's Day. Father's Day has a rich history rooted in early 20th century America. Here are a few key points detailing its origins and development. The first Father's Day celebration took place in June 1910 in Spokane, Washington. The idea for Father's Day is often attributed to Sonora Smart Dodd of Spokane, Washington. Inspired by a Mother's Day sermon in 1909, she wanted to honor her father, William Jackson Smart, a Civil War veteran and single parent who raised 6 children on his own. Father's Day gained support from various organizations and public figures over the years. President Calvin Coolidge recommended it as a national holiday in 1924, but it did not receive official recognition at that time. In 1966, President Lyndon B. Johnson issued the first presidential proclamation honoring fathers, designating the third Sunday in June as Father's Day. However, Father's Day was not officially recognized as a national holiday until 1972 when President Richard Nixon signed it into law. Today, we celebrate Father's Day with various activities including family gathering, giving gifts, and expressing gratitude. It is a day to recognize the contributions and sacrifices of fathers and to strengthen family bonds. Just as a side note, for those who are tracking the toxic attributes of our patriarchal society, you might want to know that Mother's Day has been celebrated since ancient times, starting with the Greeks and the Romans. It was adopted as a national holiday in 1914, nearly 60 years before Father's Day was officially recognized. Now I want to take a few minutes to give thanks and tribute to my father. Tragically, around 17.8 million children, about 1 in 4, grow up in fatherless homes. This has doubled over the past 50 years. It is even worse in black families where the fatherless rate has more than tripled, increasing from 20% in 1960 to over 64% currently. Whites also tripled, going from 8% to 25% over the same period. Hispanics and Latinos currently have 40% of the children in fatherless homes. This trend has had serious repercussions on our youth, particularly young men. I will do a session on this at some point because it deserves a more in-depth discussion. About my father. Unfortunately, I know very little about my father. My only knowledge of his past is from family lore passed down over the years. He really spoke to me and never talked about his past. Many World War II veterans were reluctant to speak about the horrors of that war. They tended to want to forget and return to living as best they could. My father never attended any of my sports or school events. In the last months of his life, he finally did attend my graduation from Cornell Law School. He was frail and wheelchair-bound, but I could see the pride in his face. It was one of my best days. He passed away shortly after my youngest brother's wedding day. My youngest brother was very close to my father, as he was the last sibling to live at home. My brother and his wife provided so much care for him during his last years. They also did the same for my mother. God bless them, they are saints. My father wanted so much to see my youngest brother get married and tried so hard to make it to the wedding, but didn't make it. It was a blessing in some ways, as our entire family was at his bedside when he passed. My father's name was Andrew Dino Altarelli, and he was born in 1909 in a little town near Naples, Italy. I don't have any information on his family in Italy. His surname is very unique, and I've only been able to find one other family with that name. It is possible that his surname was the result of misspelling at Ellis Island. Immigrants often had their surnames misspelled or changed by the government to be easier to pronounce or spell, or be more Americanized. He immigrated to America as a child along with his 3 older sisters. As many immigrants of his generation, he did not attend school, but rather worked at a variety of low-paying jobs and made some extra money by boxing and amateur fights at local bars. Amateur boxing in bars was sort of a thing in the early 1900s. My father's nickname was Two Gun Firpo. I can't be quite sure, but I believe his nickname was a tribute to Luis Angel Firpo, an Argentine boxer who was the first Latin American in history to challenge for the world heavyweight title. His fight against Jess Willard set a world record for boxing attendance, and his title bout against Jack Dempsey was named Ring Magazine Fight of the Year in 1923. My father lived through World War I from 1914 to 1918, the Spanish flu epidemic of 1918, the Great Depression from 1929 to 1939, World War II from 1939 to 1945, the Korean War from 1950 to 1953, the Vietnam War from 1955 to 1975, the invasion of Grenada in 1983, the invasion of Panama from 1989 to 1990, and the first Gulf War in Kuwait from 1990 to 1991. It is hard to complain about the state of the world today when you look back at my father's generation and what they endured. I'm happy to be alive today for sure, despite the pandemic and all of the conflicts around the world. We are very lucky, and I wish more people would acknowledge this reality. My father joined the U.S. Army soon after the U.S. entered World War II after the Japanese attack on Pearl Harbor on December 7, 1941. World War II had been waging in the Pacific and Europe since 1939, but the U.S. had decided to remain neutral until Pearl Harbor. My father was deployed with an armored tank unit in Italy. His unit liberated my mother's town in Italy. That is where he met and married my mother. He was 36 and she was 18. She became pregnant and they returned to America at the end of the war in 1945. My mother had spent her teenage years hiding in caves and bombed out buildings during the war. Although she was highly intelligent, she did not attend school during the war. So when my parents returned to the U.S. after the war, it was difficult to find work. My father continued to work in low-paying factory jobs, and my mother made clothes and cleaned houses to help provide for our growing family. We ended up with 10 children, 6 boys and 4 girls. I was the 6th of 10. Large Catholic families were not uncommon in those days. Not long after they arrived in America, my father became ill with emphysema and a degenerative spine disease. He also had neurofibromatosis, also known as the hunchback disease. His body was covered with tumors of various sizes, so it was not long before he was no longer able to work. This crushed him, as he could not bear the thought that he was not able to provide for his family. He was a tough man, but now completely broken. During my time with him, he sat off in the corner or on the back porch staring into space. He rarely said a word. We left him alone because we did not know how to reach him. 2 of my brothers inherited the NF gene from my father, which causes the disease. My oldest brother also inherited the spinal disease gene. So, in addition to numerous small tumors on his body, he suffered from a life-threatening curvature of the spine or hunchback. The curvature was so severe that it was crushing his organs. My younger brother also suffered from the NF gene, but his tumors were much larger and all internal. NF tumors attach to nerves and can be very painful, or in my younger brother's case, life-threatening, as he had a soccer ball-sized tumor in his abdomen that nearly killed him. Luckily, we grew up in the shadow of Yale University, and the medical school and hospital at Yale took on both of my brother's cases pro bono. My oldest brother underwent the first successful open back surgery for severe curvature of the spine. He underwent an 18-hour surgery in which they opened him up from neck to hip and installed numerous rods and clamps to straighten the spine. The doctors claimed it was a miracle he survived the surgery. Another young man who underwent the same surgery did not survive. My brother spent months in the hospital in a full body cast. We had to rent a hospital bed for him when he came home, as he was bedridden in the cast for a year. He was 17 at the time and never finished high school. I was only 7 at the time and remember spending the evenings with him playing cards to cheer him up. He never complained. It seemed like it bothered me more than him. After a year in bed, he had to wear an upper body brace from his neck to his hips. It weighed a ton and gave him sores where it rubbed his skin. Again, he never complained. He was tough like my father. They suffered in silence. Even before he was out of the brace, he joined the local volunteer fire department and eventually was elected chief. That was his passion. He also became a baker, working crazy 12-hour shifts from 4 a.m. to 4 p.m. every day. Sadly, he passed away at the age of 66. My younger brother with NF also spent most of his childhood in and out of hospitals. He underwent dozens of surgeries. He had a large tumor on one side of his face similar to the character Quasimodo in The Hunchback of Notre Dame. Fortunately, the doctors at Yale did a miraculous job removing the tumor and breaking his jaw to restructure his face so that it is not very noticeable today. Later, he also survived the removal of a soccer ball-sized tumor from his abdomen. Like my older brother, he never complained. They were a tough example to live up to. Hard to complain about my petty tribulations after seeing what they went through. All of my brothers and sisters were extremely strong and never complained about their circumstances. Complaining or making excuses was not very well received in my family. In retrospect, I realized that I learned how to be a man from my fathers and brothers. There were other adult male role models as well that had enormous influence on me, but I really didn't have to look very far for examples of how to live. The story of my mother and sisters actually is far more impressive than the men in my family, but I will save that for another day. To all of you fathers out there, happy Father's Day. And Pop, I love you.